They never told you not to dream. No, they were smarter than that. Instead, they wrapped their doubt in smiles. They sprinkled their disbelief in little sentences that felt harmless at first. Are you sure this is realistic? You know, most people fail at that. I'm just worried about you. You didn't notice it at the time, but every one of those words was a brick. And every brick was quietly building a wall around you, a cage you didn't even realize you were. Stepping into it, it starts early. Maybe it was in school when you raised your hand one too many times and someone rolled their eyes. Maybe it was at home, when your idea for something big was met with that polite half smile, the one that says, "That's cute, but you'll grow out of it," and you believed them, not because they were right, because they were the voices you trusted. It's funny you can spend years thinking you're free while you're actually living on a leash. The leash isn't made of chains. It's made of glances, of tones, the pauses in a conversation when you share your dream, and suddenly the air feels heavier. It's made of the way they change the subject when you talk about your vision, as if what you want is too strange to even exist in their world. The truth. Approval is addictive. It's not just that you want them to believe in you, it's that every nod, every good job feels like oxygen. And when they don't give it to you, you choke. You start to second-guess yourself, thinking, if they don't think I can do it, maybe I can't. And slowly, you learn to shrink your ideas, not to avoid failure, but to avoid their silence. Because silence is worse than criticism. Silence makes you feel invisible. You start to live in a small, invisible box of acceptable dreams. Dreams. You approve of dreams that make sense to them. And here's the cruel part. They make you feel like that's your choice. Like you're the one who decided not to take risks. Like you're being realistic. But the reality. You've been trained to keep your hunger on a leash so it never makes them uncomfortable, you see. The people who hold your approval don't always want you to fail, but they don't want you to outgrow them either. They don't want you to shine so bright that their own shadows start to show, so they keep you just bright enough to be safe, but never so bright that they have to squint. It's a quiet kind of control, and you don't even realize it's working. Until one day, you wake up and realize your life looks nothing like the one you wanted, but you justify it. You say, it's okay. At least they're proud of me. At least they approve. At least I'm not alone. But here's the thing no one tells you. Living for their approval doesn't protect you from loneliness. It just makes you lonely in a way that's harder to explain. It's a loneliness that comes from knowing, deep down, you betrayed yourself to keep their smiles. And that betrayal, it burns. It burns when you're alone at night and you replay every conversation you didn't have. It burns when you scroll through other people's lives and see them doing the thing you wanted to do, never started. It burns every time you put on the mask of being fine while your real life sits somewhere behind a locked door. That's the cage. Not a prison made of steel, but a prison built out of permission slips. A place where every decision you make first has to pass the test of will they approve of this? And the worst part? You've been in it so long. You've forgotten the door is open, asterisk. It didn't happen in slow motion. It didn't happen with some Hollywood speech or a perfect sunrise. It happened in the middle of an ordinary day. It's a kind of day you're not supposed to remember. You were there, doing what you always do, nodding at the right moments. Came smiling just enough, holding back the part of you that might make someone uncomfortable. You'd gotten good at it. Too good. And then it came. That one sentence. That one look. That one moment where the air changed. Maybe it was someone telling you again that you're not ready. Maybe it was being passed over for the thing you'd been quietly working toward for years. Or maybe it was the laugh, that small, sharp laugh from someone who had no idea they'd just lit the fuse. It's strange how fast it can happen. 1 second you're swallowing it down, like you always do. The next, something inside you snaps. Not in rage, not in drama, but in silence. A dangerous, heavy silence. Because here's the thing about silence. When you've spent years giving parts of yourself away just to keep the peace, the moment you stop, giving, the whole world feels it. You didn't plan it. You didn't stand up and announce, that's it, I'm done. No, it was quieter than that. More dangerous than that. It was you deciding right there, down the pit of your stomach. I'm not asking anymore. The room didn't notice at first. They kept talking, kept moving, kept assuming you'd stay the same, but you knew. You could feel it in your bones. The leash was slipping off. Cage door was swinging open, and here's the twist. Freedom doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels terrifying. It feels like standing on the edge of a cliff with no one holding your hand. Because when you've built your life around their approval, stepping outside, it feels like stepping into nothing. That's why so many people go back. They peek out of the cage, feel the wind, get dizzy, and retreat back into the safety of good job and we're proud of you. But you, not this time. Not after what happened next. Because the moment you stopped seeking their nod, you saw something you weren't supposed to see. You saw how small their world really was. You saw how the people you'd been waiting on for permission had never built anything worth envying. You saw that their approval wasn't a gold medal, it was a chain. And once you see the chain, you can't unsee it. It's a strange kind of grief. It's realizing the people you thought were protecting you were really protecting themselves from watching you do what they see, OULD in single quotes. The climax of that day wasn't some grand argument. It was the way you walked out, not slamming the door. It's not shouting, just gone. It was the way you deleted their advice messages without reading them. It was the way you looked in the mirror that night and didn't recognize yourself. Not because you were lost, because you were finally meeting the version of you that had been waiting all these years. The version that didn't need applause. The version that didn't need permission. The version that would rather be alone in the storm than safe in the cage. And in that moment, you understood the truth no one had told you. They can't stop you once you decide you're done asking. They can whisper, they can doubt, they can disappear. But the leash only works if you're still holding the other end, and you had just dropped it. At first, they thought you'd be back by Monday. They thought this was just one of your phases, like a moody weather change they could wait out. You'd get tired, they assumed. Would remember how cold it feels without their warm circle of approval, but Monday came, and you weren't back instead. Something started happening that they didn't expect you. It began moving differently. Your voice sounded different. Your eyes didn't search for theirs anymore, and without realizing it, they started to shift in their chairs when you entered the room, not out of respect, but out of something sharper. Something they hadn't felt toward you in years. Fear, see. People will ignore you when they think you're safe. They'll dismiss you when you're predictable. But the second they see you walking in a direction they can't control, they start watching you like you're dangerous, and dangerous is exactly what you'd become. Because now, you weren't trying to be included, you were building your own table. You weren't begging for a seat. You were picking your own view. And the thing about people who stop waiting for permission, they start moving faster than anyone can follow. You began saying the things you'd been biting back for years, not in anger, not in petty revenge, but with that calm, steady tone of someone who no longer needs to win an argument because they've already won the freedom to walk away from one. And here's where the twist came. It wasn't just that you stopped needing them. It was that they started needing you. The people who once kept you in your place suddenly couldn't move without looking over to see if you approved. The ones who used to correct you began repeating your words to others, like they'd thought of them themselves. And the most ironic part, the same voice that once told you you're not ready, was now whispering, "We always believed in you." But you didn't smile. You didn't let them rewrite history, because you remembered every moment they left you, standing in the cold, and you knew this wasn't about them believing in you. This was about them realizing you no longer cared if they did. That's the moment the cage doesn't just open, it collapses. Because it was never locked from the outside, it was held together by your own belief that you needed the people. Holding the keys, you didn't need them. You never had. The climax came on a day just like the one that started it all, ordinary, unremarkable. Until it wasn't. You were in the same room, at the same table, the same faces who once decided your worth. But this time, when they looked at you, they didn't see the quiet, careful version of yourself they'd shaped. They saw the storm, and storms don't ask for permission to break the sky. So you spoke, not to convince them, not to prove anything. You spoke because your voice no longer lived in your throat, it lived in your bones. And when the words left your mouth, they didn't land on their ears. They landed in their chests, like a cold truth they couldn't spit out. That was the day they knew you weren't coming back. Not to their approval, not to their version of you, not to the cage. And as you walked out, not looking over your shoulder, not checking for their reaction, you realized something else. You hadn't just left them. You'd left behind the part of yourself that thought you needed to be chosen. From here on, you were doing the choosing. Asterisk at first, it felt strange. Like walking barefoot after years in heavy boots. The ground felt softer, lighter, and yet every step carried the ghost of the weight you'd once worn. You'd wake up some mornings expecting the old. Pull the need to check your phone for their messages, to scan their faces for approval, to shape your day around their comfort. But the pull wasn't there anymore. In its place was space, and space is dangerous, because once you taste it, you can't go back to breathing through someone else's hands around your throat. It's in that space you start to notice things. The way the sun hits your window at a certain hour, and you're there to see it, not trapped in a conversation that drains you. The way you laugh louder now, because you're not measuring the sound. The way your reflection looks back at you like it knows a secret, and it's not asking for permission to keep it. But here's the part no one talks about. When you break free, you don't just leave people behind. You leave pieces of yourself, too. The version of you that played small to keep the peace. The version that edited your sentences until they were safe. The version that swallowed no because yes was easier, and losing those parts hurts, even when they were killing you. Some days, you'll miss them. Not because they were right. Not because they were good for you, but because they were familiar. Familiarity has a way of disguising itself as comfort. This is the test. Because the moment you start missing the old cage, the world will give you a dozen chances to step back inside. An old friend who just wants to talk. A family dinner where the same old games are played under the table. A sudden apology that sounds sweet but tastes like bait, and you will be tempted. Not because you've forgotten what they did, but because you remember who you were when you didn't have to be strong all the time. But here's the twist. Strength isn't something you carry, it's something you become, and you now. You are unrecognizable. The places that used to shrink you now feel too small to stand in. The conversations that used to drain you now sound like static you can turn off with a single thought. And the people who used to define you, they're just names on a list you no longer need to read. That's when you realize the real win wasn't leaving them. The real win was building a world so rich, so full, so yours, that they wouldn't know how to survive in it, even if they wanted to. You start filling your days with voices that make you feel bigger, not smaller. You start chasing challenges that scare you in the best way, the kind that stretch you, not the kind that break you. And you stop explaining yourself. Not out of arrogance, but because explanation was the currency of your old life, and you've switched to a different economy by now. The echo of their absence has faded into background noise. Not silence, just irrelevance. They might still talk about you. They might still watch you. They might still wait for the day you come to your senses. But the truth is, you've never been more in your senses than you are now. In one quiet evening, when the world outside feels still, you'll catch yourself smiling for no reason, not because of some grand achievement, not because you've proven anyone wrong, but because you've finally proven yourself right. You didn't just survive leaving them. You didn't just rebuild. You rewrote the rules entirely, and now every step you take is in a language they can't speak. And in that moment, you'll know this isn't the end of your story. It's the first chapter they'll never be able to touch.